Grok2api is a pure Go implementation of an API gateway designed to work with Grok Build, Grok Web, and Grok Console. The project groups the 3OAuth and single sign-on services into separate account pools and exposes a set of OpenAI-style endpoints, an Anthropic messages-compatible interface, and a management backend for accounts, models, keys, usage, and proxy settings. Key features of the gateway include, 3 independent providers, Grok Build, Grok Web, and Grok Console, each with its own routing, quota, and fault status, standard APIs for responses, chat completions, images, asynchronous video generation, and Anthropic-style messages, multi-account scheduling that can be tuned by priority, concurrency limits, quota gating, session stickiness, cooldown periods, and automatic failover, multiple ways to connect accounts, device OAuth, OAuth JSON, SSO JSON, and Linebuline SSO tokens, media capabilities such as image generation, image editing, video generation, local storage of images, and returning URLs or base64 strings, backend storage options with SQLite or PostgreSQL for persistent data, in-memory or Redis for runtime state, HTTP and SOX proxy pools for outbound traffic, security measures, AES 256 GCM encryption for credentials, client-side key hashing, log masking, SSRF protection, and outbound traffic limits, a React admin dashboard that lets you manage accounts, models, client keys, request audits, API documentation, and Trello-loadable settings. The architecture is straightforward. API clients talk to the Go gateway, which forwards requests to a router that directs calls to the appropriate provider. Each provider has its own account pool and an egress pool for outbound traffic. The gateway also communicates with a database and a runtime store, and a media storage layer for images and videos. Deploy the gateway quickly with Docker Compose. First clone the repository, copy the example configuration, and edit the config.yaml file to supply a hex JWT secret and a base64 credential encryption key. Optionally set a Bootstrap admin username and password. Bring the stack up with Docker Compose upd. The container mounts the configuration readily and persists SQLite data and media under a name volume. Logs can be followed with Docker Compose logs f grok2api, and the container can be restarted or stopped with the usual compose commands. If you prefer to run from source, start the backend with the go run.cmd grok2api after configuring config.yaml, and launch the frontend dev server with pnpm install npm dev. The frontend is served on port 5173 and proxies API calls to the backend on port 8000. First-time setup includes logging in with a Bootstrap admin account, adding upstream accounts in the Upstream Accounts panel, waiting for quota and model sync, verifying external model names and model management, creating a client key that starts with G2A, and calling the API with that key. After initial use, delete the Bootstrap admin section from the configuration and keep the credential encryption key safe, as changing it will render stored credentials unreadable. Account sources differ for each provider. Grok Build supports device OAuth and OAuth JSON and offers native responses, chat, messages, billing, and model synchronization. Grok Web uses SSO JSON and Linebuline SSO tokens, providing chat, responses, messages, image generation, image editing, and video generation. Grok Console accepts SSO JSON and tokens, but only offers stateless responses and compatibility with chat and messages. Web and Console SSO tokens do not renew automatically, so credentials expire and accounts leave the pool until reauthorized. Model naming follows specific rules. External model names do not include the provider prefix. Internally, the router prefixes roots with Build, Web, or Console to indicate the source. Models per provider are listed in the admin panel or retrieved with get v1/models. The gateway migrates internal routing on upgrades without changing client key permissions or old aliases. When multiple sources have the same external model name, the gateway selects the source based on client rights, protocol capabilities, and account availability. A provider prefix name can still be used to force a specific channel. The web provider includes built-in models such as Grok Chatfist, Grok Chatauto, Grok Chat Expert, Grok Truthovi, Grok Image and Image, Grok Image and Image Quality, Grok Image and Image Edit, and Grok Image and Video, each with a defined minimum level requirement. The console provider offers multiple build and reason models such as Grok 4.3, Grok 4.200309, Grok 4.200309 Reasoning, Grok 4.200309 Non-Reasoning, Grok 4.20 Multi-Agent 0309, Grok Build 0.1, and Grok 4.5, which is not registered by the console provider. The console provider always uses the internal console prefix and never appends a conflict suffix. Upgraded aliases from previous runs are not returned by get v1/models. All public v1 endpoints require a bearer key authorization, bearer G2. A convenient minimal example of a chat completion is export grok2api API key equals G2 curl http://127.0.0.1:8000/v1/responses h authorization bearer $grok2api API key h content type application chenyme model grok chat auto input stream true. The configuration file config.yaml organizes settings into sections: server, address, limits, lifecycle, Swagger toggle, frontend, public API endpoint and static directory, database, SQLite or PostgreSQL choice, runtime store, memory or Redis, auth, admin token and safe cookies, secrets, JWT and credential keys, provider, default upstream config, and media, storage driver and path, account, model, quota, audit, client key, media tasks, and runtime settings are persisted relationally. Redis is used for rate limits, concurrency, stickiness, distributed locks, quota recovery events, and multi-instance notifications. Typical production deployments recommend using HTTPS, enabling secure cookies, keeping Swagger off, deploying PostgreSQL and Redis for multi-instance setups, sharing local media via a volume or instance affinity, backing up the YAML file, database, and media directories, and never checking in OAuth, SSO, Cloudflare cookies, or account export files. For exposed services, set up a reverse proxy, logging, and basic network protection. On the development side, run unit tests for the backend with the go test, and race checks, vet the code, and build the binary. The frontend undergoes linting and a production build. Further reading and documentation are available in the backend, frontend, provider architecture, and API compatibility sections of the project repository.